EU countries have agreed on a new 16th package of sanctions against Russia. Another 13 Russian banks will be disconnected from the international payment system SWIFT. 8 media companies of the aggressor country will lose their license to operate in the EU, President of the European Commission Ursula von der Leyen said.
I welcome the agreement on our 16th package of sanctions. The EU is clamping down even harder on circumvention by targeting more vessels in Putin's shadow fleet and imposing new import and export bans. We are committed to keep up the pressure on the Kremlin. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission on X social network.
The new restrictions on Russia's shadow fleet will imply the possibility of penalizing ship campaigns and owners. If they are sanctioned, they will not be able to enter the EU and their assets will be frozen. In addition, Brussels will add 73 more tankers to the sanctions list. They will be banned from entering EU ports and harbors, and outside companies will be prohibited from providing any services to such vessels. Russia's shadow fleet is a potential threat to the security of the European Union, the European Parliament believes.
Russia's shadow fleet, which consists of a growing number of aging and poorly maintained vessels that operate with minimal regard to the regulations, can cause oil spills in sensitive ecosystems such as the Baltic Sea. Added to this is the lack of insurance for these vessels and the lack of transparency of their owners and the flags they fly, which makes monitoring and regulation very difficult. It is clear to me that Russia can use the risk of pollution as leverage against Europe, which could have dire consequences. Engin Eroglu, member of the European Parliament, in a comment to the Guildhall publication,
as well as further tightening restrictions on Russia's oil exports, the EU 16th package of sanctions targets the Russian metals industry. It includes a ban on imports of primary aluminium from the Russian Federation.
The aluminium issue is quite hot. Why? Because it is the production of aircraft, the production of a number of devices at once. Aluminium is one of the most attractive materials used in a variety of areas, from mechanical engineering to the gadgets we all use.
The aluminium import ban will be implemented in phases over a year from the date the package is officially passed.
We are talking about introducing a so-called phased restriction on aluminium imports, and this will really require European and not only European market players to somehow reconsider their production chains, to reconsider their logistics chains.
As part of the 16th package of sanctions, the European Union will not impose a complete ban on purchases of Russian liquid natural gas. Instead, the supply of Russian liquid natural gas to terminals that are not connected to the European Union's common gas distribution system will be halted. That is, the restriction will affect only a portion of imports. The Minister of Energy of Lithuania, Žygimantas Vaikūnas, expressed regret that the new sanctions will not affect all Russian liquid gas on the European market. After all, the European Union purchased more than 6 billion euros worth of liquid natural gas from Russia in 2024, and that's 18% more than in 2023.
However, as European Union gas demand was flat last year, more work is needed to diversify energy supplies and reduce Europe's exposure to liquefied natural gas market volatility. Anna Maria Jaler-Makarovich, the lead energy analyst for the American Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis on X social network.
Video game equipment will now also be banned. Russia uses it to control drones.
We are really looking into, all types of things that really help Russia to wage this war, to put them on sanctions list. I mean, even elements like, the consoles for the video games, because apparently these are the ones that they operate the drones with. So really being, creative or chemicals regarding chemicals that are needed for the Russian military industry.
Advisor and Presidential Commissioner for Sanctions Policy Vladislav Vlasyuk has said that the 16th package of European Union sanctions against Russia is expected to be approved in the coming days. The new restrictions are to come into force on 24th February 2025, the third anniversary of the start of the Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Reported by Alexandra Zaslavets, Valeria Nikipelova, UATV News.
Washington may impose stricter sanctions on Russia if the Kremlin refuses to reach a peace agreement with Ukraine that includes long-term guarantees for Kyiv, U.S. Vice President JD Vance stated in an interview with the Wall Street Journal. According to him, Washington is considering various measures to pressure Moscow, both economic and military. This includes the potential deployment of U.S. troops to Ukraine if Moscow refuses to engage in what he called good faith negotiations. The United States is committed to ensuring Ukraine retains its sovereignty and independence, Vance emphasized. He also noted that depending on how negotiations develop, Donald Trump might revise his stance on the matter.
President Trump could say, "Look, we don't want this thing. We might not like this thing, but we're willing to put it back on the table if the Russians aren't being good negotiating partners, or there are things that are very important to Ukrainians that we might want to take off the table." JD Vance, Vice President of the United States, in an interview with the Wall Street Journal.
The European Union is also preparing new restrictions against the aggressor state. Ahead of the third anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the European Commission is working on its 16th sanctions package. The measures will target the import of Russian fossil fuels. European Commission spokesperson Paolo Pino announced.
I do not know exactly what the US has in mind and the Defense Secretary when they speak about sanctions on energy. I don't think that they have been explicit about it, but we, on our side, on the side of the EU, have a number of packages. We're now on the 16th being debated, which affect also energy and which contribute to the gradual phasing out of our imports of fossil fuels from Russia. They are part also of our gradual phasing out of dependence on fossil fuels from Russia, which is also again reiterated in our what we call the Repower EU objectives, which is indeed to gradually, totally phase out.
While Kyiv's partners discuss additional sanctions, experts are analyzing the impact of those already in place. For instance, U.S. sanctions imposed in January 2025 against Russia's shadow fleet have already disrupted 60% of sanctioned vessels, halting their oil transportation. This data gathered by Bloomberg's ship tracking sources suggests that these sanctions, combined with strikes on Russia's energy infrastructure, will force the aggressor state to reduce fuel production, analysts say.
The output cuts could start small, with Russia's production slipping below 9 million barrels per day, BPD, in the coming months, but may accelerate if tanker shortages and refining outages persist, the executive said. There are already signs of weakening crude exports in trading data. Volumes from Russia's western ports of Primorsk, Ust-Luga, and Novorossiysk in January were down 17% from a year earlier, Reuters calculations based on traders' data showed, from the Reuters publication.
Experts believe the effects of sanctions will become even more apparent in the near future, with existing economic difficulties worsening due to new restrictions.
With ruble, I don't even doubt that. So it was too much. First of all, it's the exchange rate which is not comfortable for many of the exporters and which is not comfortable for the federal budget. We've seen that last year, and no doubt there will not be much federal budget revenues. Nothing to impress, actually, if from not from the negative side. And many exporters will feel themselves uncomfortable with imagine that for a second, that such an exchange rate like 90 plus, a little bit greater than 90, will stay for at least a few weeks.
Over the long term, Russia could face a sharp decline in economic activity. According to analysts from Reuters, who examined reports from the Russian Central Bank and the Ministry of Economic Development, the Kremlin overly rigid policies to curb inflation are slowing economic growth, the report states. However, the document's authors are particularly concerned about a potential increase in oil production by the US and OPEC countries, which could lead to a drop in fuel prices. As a result, analysts predict that in the coming years the Kremlin will be forced to reduce budget expenditures. Reported by Serhiy Kulas, Andriy Dmytrenko, UATV News.